Welcome to our deep dive into the sometimes kind of scary world of coding interviews.
Yeah, scary for sure.
We'll be taking a look at cracking the coding interview.
A classic.
It's got all this stuff you'd expect, algorithms, data structures, and all that.
Right, the technical meat and potatoes.
But then it goes even deeper,
Oh, yeah.
like problem-solving techniques, system
To
design,
stuff you actually need on the job.
and even how to negotiate a job offer.
The book really does try to cover it all.
So even if you aren't a programmer yourself, I think there's something really interesting here.
Definitely.
It's a glimpse into how these tech companies think, how they decide who to hire.
Right, it pulls back the curtain a bit.
So let's start with that.
Okay.
Why are these coding interviews so notoriously tough?
Well,
You always hear these stories about people getting grilled on whiteboards.
yeah.
And, does anyone actually code on a whiteboard in real life?
It's definitely a common complaint
Right.
that the interview process doesn't really reflect the day-to-day work. But I think if you look at it from the company's perspective, it makes a bit more sense.
Okay, how so?
They're not just testing what you've memorized.
Okay.
They want to see how you think,
Ah.
how you approach a problem you've never seen before.
So it's more about problem solving under pressure,
Exactly.
which is actually pretty important for any developer,
For sure, you're constantly hitting roadblocks debugging.
and coming up with creative solutions.
Right.
So it's like anyone can cram for a test,
Mm-hmm.
but can you apply that knowledge in a new situation?
That's what they're trying to figure out.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the book gets into some of the specifics of this whole process.
Like what?
Well, have you ever heard of the bar raiser interviewer?
Bar raiser? No, what's that?
It's pretty intense, actually.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
This person is specifically trained to maintain a high hiring bar for the entire company.
Wow, so they're like the guardians of the company's standards.
You could say that. They might even interview candidates from teams they're not on just to make sure everyone's being evaluated consistently.
Huh. So they're not just looking for technical skills.
Right,
They also want to make sure the candidate is a good fit for the company culture.
exactly. And the bar raiser plays a key role in that.
So what does the typical interview process look like then?
Well, it often starts with phone screens,
Right.
where they might ask you to solve some basic coding problems.
Out of a warm-up,
Yeah, and if you get through that, you're invited for on-site interviews.
which is where the whiteboard coding comes in.
Exactly. You usually meet with multiple teams.
And I'm guessing the bar raiser is lurking somewhere in there.
Oh, you'll definitely meet them at some point.
Sounds pretty rigorous.
It's designed to be thorough.
Well, speaking of rigorous, let's talk about algorithms.
Ooh, yeah, the heart of coding interviews.
Definitely something that can make even experienced programmers sweat a little.
For sure, it's a big focus of the book.
So how does it approach this topic?
Well, before diving into specific algorithms, the book stresses the importance of understanding Big O notation.
Right, big O notation.
It's a way to measure how efficient your code is.
Now, I remember struggling with this back in college.
Haha. Yeah, it can be a bit tricky.
Can you break it down for us?
And for our listeners who maybe aren't programmers,
Yeah, make it make sense.
sure, think of it like comparing a sports car to a bicycle.
Okay.
They both get you to your destination,
The one does it much faster.
especially over long distances.
Right.
And Big O notation is basically a way to describe how the performance of your code scales as the amount of data you're working with increases.
So, like, choosing the right algorithm is kind of like choosing the right vehicle for your journey.
That's a great analogy.
If you're just going down the block, the bicycle might be fine.
Right.
But if you're crossing the country, you'll want that sports car.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's going to take you forever.
And in programming, that could mean the difference between your code running in seconds versus taking hours,
Wow, that's a pretty big difference.
especially when you're dealing with huge data sets.
So how does the book help you figure out which vehicle to choose?
It uses clear examples to show how different algorithms perform.
Okay, like what?
Well, one example is nested loops.
Okay,
Imagine you have a list of items and you want to find all the possible pairs you can make.
all right,
As the list grows, the number of pairs explodes.
makes sense.
And that kind of operation is what we call O of n squared,
O of n squared.
meaning the runtime grows quadratically with the size of your input.
So as the list gets longer, the time it takes to process it increases way faster.
Much faster than if you were just going through the list once.
Gotcha.
And the book shows you how to analyze your code to figure out its Big O complexity.
Useful.
It also gives you examples of algorithms with different runtimes, like algorithms that involve having the input size repeatedly.
Okay.
Those have what we call logarithmic runtime,
Logarithmic runtime.
denoted as O of log n.
Ah, I vaguely remember that from math class.
It comes back to haunt us.
So basically, the choice of algorithm can really impact how efficient your code is.
It's crucial, especially when you're dealing with massive amounts of data.
So that's big O notation.
In a nutshell.
But the book goes even further, right?
Oh, yeah. It even introduces this concept called best conceivable runtime, or BCR.
BCR, what's that?
It's basically a way to figure out the absolute best runtime you could possibly achieve for a given problem.
So it's like a benchmark
Exactly. You measure your solution against the BCR.
to see if there's any room for improvement.
Right. It's like knowing the theoretical top speed of your sports car.
Even if you don't hit that speed in real life, it's good to know what you're aiming for.
Exactly.
Like that.
So we've talked about big O notation and choosing efficient algorithms.
Yeah, a lot of information.
But I'm curious, how does the book tackle actually solving coding problems?
Right, does it just throw a bunch of algorithms at you and say good luck?
Not at all. It provides a structured approach to problem solving, which we'll unpack in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. I'm ready for part 2. Okay, so we've got our metaphorical sports car all warmed up.
Ready to race?
And we know that choosing the right algorithm is key for writing efficient code.
Absolutely.
But how do we actually approach solving a specific coding problem?
Right. How do you put all this knowledge into practice?
Does the book just like throw you into the deep end?
Not at all. It actually lays out this really helpful 7-step framework.
7 steps.
Yeah, for tackling those tricky coding challenges.
Okay, 7-step framework, I'm listening.
So step 1 is understanding the problem.
Which sounds obvious.
Right. But it's about more than just reading the problem statement.
Okay,
It's about really digging into the details.
I see.
The book suggests starting with a concrete example,
Oh, okay.
just to make sure you grasp all the nuances and potential edge cases.
So before I even think about writing code, I need to make sure I really understand what's being asked.
Exactly. It's like reading the instructions before assembling a piece of furniture.
Yeah.
You don't want to end up with extra parts or a wobbly table. Right.
Because you missed a crucial step.
Okay, so once I understand the problem, what's next?
Well, then you move on to developing a brute force solution.
Brute force.
Yeah, this might not be the most elegant or efficient approach,
Right.
but it gives you a starting point.
Okay.
It helps you wrap your head around the problem.
So it's like building a basic shelter before you construct a fancy house.
Precisely, get the fundamentals in place first.
Okay. And then once you have that brute force solution.
Then you can start optimizing.
So that's where the real fun begins.
Yeah, this is where you get to be creative and explore different techniques to improve your code's efficiency.
I like it.
And the book has a great example of this using a problem about finding pairs of numbers
Okay.
whose cubes add up to a certain target sum.
Cubes? Ha. So, all right, I'm listening. So the brute force way would be to just check every single pair.
Right, which would take forever if you have a lot of numbers.
Exactly, especially with a large data set.
So how do you optimize that?
Well, the book shows how using a hash table can dramatically reduce the number of comparisons you need to make.
Hash tables, we talked about those earlier.
Yeah, they're all about quick lookups.
Right, like having a perfectly organized filing system.
Exactly, instead of searching through a messy drawer.
Much easier.
And speaking of making things easier, the book also emphasizes explaining your thought process.
Oh, right, not just getting the right answer, but showing how you got there.
Exactly. So step 4 is walking through your optimized solution step by step.
Like showing your work in a math problem.
Precisely. You want to make sure your interviewer understands your reasoning.
Makes sense.
And then comes the implementation phase,
Step 5.
where you actually write the code.
Time to put those coding skills to the test.
Yes, but it's not just about getting the code to work.
Right.
It's also about writing clean, well-structured code.
So no sloppy shortcuts.
No spaghetti code.
Even in an interview setting.
Even in an interview, good coding practices matter.
Because it shows you care about quality and maintainability.
Yeah, exactly. Which are important qualities in any software engineer.
Okay, so clean code is key.
And of course, you can't forget testing.
Step 6.
Testing, testing, testing.
I know it's important, but honestly, I sometimes feel like it's an afterthought.
I get it. But interviewers do pay attention to how you test your code.
Really?
Oh yeah, they're looking for thoroughness, attention to detail.
Like, can you think of edge cases that might break your code?
Exactly. And do you know how to write tests to catch potential errors?
So it's about demonstrating a comprehensive understanding.
of the entire development process.
Not just cranking out code.
Right.
Okay, I see your point.
And finally, step 7,
The final step,
reflecting on your solution.
so taking a step back and looking at the big picture.
Yeah. Is it as efficient as it could be? Did you use the best data structures?
Could you have approached the problem differently?
Exactly. This step shows that you're a critical thinker.
Always striving to improve.
Right.
So this 7-step framework is really about showcasing your skills
Your problem-solving skills, your coding style, your ability to think critically.
and to learn from the process.
Exactly.
And don't forget those additional tips we touched on earlier.
Right, like considering special cases looking for unnecessary work.
And always keeping that best conceivable runtime in mind.
As you optimize.
It's like having a toolbox full of strategies.
Exactly, and you can pull out the right tool for the job.
Okay, so we've talked about algorithms and how to solve coding problems.
Using this handy 7-step framework.
But algorithms are only one piece of the puzzle, right?
Right, especially as you move into more senior roles.
Okay.
You'll start encountering system design interviews.
System design interviews.
Yeah, which focus on your ability to design scalable systems.
Scalable systems,
Systems that can handle massive amounts of data in traffic.
like social media platforms.
Exactly, or online marketplaces.
Those sound pretty intimidating.
It can be challenging.
I mean, I use these systems all the time, but I can't even imagine where I would start in designing one.
It's like thinking about the blueprint for a large-scale project.
Okay.
You need to consider the big picture, how all the pieces fit together.
And luckily, the book breaks down this process as well.
Oh, yeah, it does a great job of making it manageable.
Okay, break it down for me.
So the first thing it emphasizes is asking clarifying questions.
Before you even start designing.
Right, you want to make sure you understand the system's requirements, its constraints, its goals.
And what are you building? Who are the users? What are their needs?
Exactly. It's like meeting with a client before you start designing their dream house.
You need to understand their vision, their budget, how they plan to use the space.
Exactly. And once you have a clear understanding of the problem,
Then you can start outlining the system's components.
right, what are the key building blocks? How do they interact with each other?
Okay.
You might start with simple diagrams and then add more detail as you go.
So like sketching out a rough floor plan.
Exactly, before you draw up the detailed blueprints.
Gotcha.
And as you're designing, you need to be thinking about scalability.
Right. How will the system handle increased traffic or data storage needs?
Exactly, what are the trade-offs between different design choices?
It all comes back to efficiency and performance.
Just like with algorithms and big O notation,
Everything's connected.
it is. And the book gives a really good example of this with designing a URL shortener.
A URL shortener, we use those all the time.
Right. Have you ever thought about what goes into building one?
To be honest, not really.
Well, there's a lot to consider.
Like what?
Well, first you need to think about storage. How will you store the mapping between long and short URLs?
Okay.
Then you need a retrieval system to quickly fetch the long URL when someone clicks on a shortened link.
Makes sense.
And you also have to consider how to handle collisions.
Collisions.
Yeah. What happens when two different long URLs map to the same short URL?
Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
The common problem.
And then how do you track all the clicks and usage data?
Right. That's a lot to manage.
It sounds like it.
And that's where data structures come in.
Data structures, the building blocks of any complex system.
Exactly. Understanding them is crucial for designing efficient and scalable solutions.
So we've gone from understanding the building blocks of code
Algorithms and data structures.
to seeing how they're applied in large-scale system design.
It all fits together.
It's pretty amazing.
But remember, even the most brilliant code is useless.
If you can't communicate your ideas effectively,
Right, and showcase your soft skills.
which is what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. All right, so we've covered algorithms, data structures, system design. It's been a lot.
A lot of technical stuff for sure.
But I have a feeling there's more to landing a tech job than just nailing the technical stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Technical skills are essential, but they're only part of the equation.
Okay, so what's the other part?
Well, companies also want to see that you can communicate effectively,
Makes sense.
that you can work well in teams and, basically be a pleasant human being to work with.
Yeah, nobody wants to work with a jerk no matter how brilliant they are.
Exactly. So soft skills are super important.
So how does cracking the coding interview address that side of things?
Well, it emphasizes the importance of behavioral questions.
Behavioral questions.
Yeah, those questions that explore your past experiences, how you handle challenges, how you work with others.
Oh, right.
And the key here is to tell compelling stories.
Ooh, stories. Everyone loves a good story.
Exactly.
So what kind of stories should I be prepared to tell in a coding interview?
Think about situations that demonstrate your key strengths.
Okay.
Like, for example, you might be asked about a time you faced a conflict with a team member.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic interview question.
It is, and instead of just giving a dry, factual account,
Right?
turn it into a story
Yeah.
that highlights your problem-solving skills, your
Yeah.
ability to collaborate effectively.
So instead of just saying we disagreed, but then we figured it out,
Yeah,
I should paint a picture of the situation, explain the challenges,
right.
and show how I took initiative to find a solution.
Exactly. Bring the interviewer into the story. Make them feel like they're right there with you,
Ah, I see.
experiencing the challenge, witnessing your problem-solving process.
And it's not just about the outcome.
Right.
It's about how you approach the situation, what you learn from it.
Exactly.
Okay, that's really helpful. I think storytelling is definitely something I can work on.
It's a valuable skill.
Is there anything else the book highlights in terms of soft skills?
Well, negotiating a job offer is another big one.
Ooh, yeah, negotiation, that always makes me nervous.
I know it can be awkward, especially when you're excited about the opportunity,
Right, exactly.
but it's an important part of the process.
I agree. It just feels a bit like a game, and I'm not sure I know the rules.
Well, the book gives some good advice.
Like what?
Well, first of all, it stresses the importance of knowing your worth.
Knowing your worth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do your research on typical salaries and benefits for similar roles.
So I should know what I should be paid before I even step into the interview.
Exactly. Go into the negotiation with a clear understanding of your market value.
Okay, but what if the company's initial offer is lower than I expected?
Then you negotiate.
Ah, easier said than done.
I know, but the book suggests having a viable alternative.
Like another job offer.
Exactly, or a clear plan B,
Okay.
and have specific asks in mind.
So don't just say, I want more.
Right. Explain why you believe your skills and experience warrant a higher salary or better benefits.
Be prepared to make your case.
Exactly.
So it's about being prepared, knowing my worth, and being able to articulate my value.
You got it.
This has been incredibly insightful. I feel like I've learned so much.
Glad to hear it.
We've gone from the nuts and bolts of coding to the human side of landing a tech job.
It's all connected.
It really is. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I think the biggest takeaway from cracking the coding interview is that preparation is key.
Preparation is key.
These interviews are challenging, but with dedicated effort and the right strategies, you can definitely crack them.
So practice those algorithms. Brush up on those data structures. And don't forget to polish those soft skills.
It's a holistic approach.
And even if you don't ace every interview, it's a learning experience.
Absolutely. Each interview helps you refine your skills and prepare for the next opportunity.
So it's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one conducting the interviews.
Ooh, I like that.
Using the insights you've gained to find the next generation of talented coders.
That's a great thought to end on.
Thanks.
So to all you aspiring coders out there, best of luck on your interview journey.
You got this.
And if you're looking for a comprehensive guide to help you navigate this world, definitely check out Cracking the Coding Interview.
It's a classic for a reason.
It's full of knowledge and practical advice that can really make a difference.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, that's all for our deep dive this week. Thanks for joining us and happy coding.